All right, welcome to the Brad Haider podcast, part 2 of our 2013 Wall-to-Wall Baseball MLB Preview. Today, we're going to be breaking down the American League Central. Once again, here with the Honorable Joe Pascal. Joe, welcome back.
Appreciate it.
All right, so let's dive right in here. Talking about the AL Central, and just as a little side note here, in honor of our discussions of the Central Division in the American League, I have on the Rick Wild Thing Vaughn jersey from the Major League movies. I just felt it was appropriate.
Should have gone with the haircut and the glasses too, man.
Maybe next time. I have an Indians hat, but
Go
I'm
big or go
inside.
home, man. Go big or go home.
All right, so let's get down to the baseball here. Starting off, let's run down what our projected order of finish in the division is. I'll start. I think number one, the team that's going to win this division this year is going to be the Detroit Tigers, defending American League champions. I just think they improved from last year, and they're just kind of the class of the division at this point. Second place, the Chicago White Sox, kind of a surprise team last year, finishing above 500, only losing the division to the Tigers by 3 games. Definitely improved their lineup, re-signed some key guys and their pitching staff. So I think they're going to come in the second spot. 3 and 4 are kind of a tough call for me. I like some things both about the Royals and the Indians, but I can't really. I'm teetering back and forth between which one I think will finish third and which one will finish fourth. But I think I'm going to put the Cleveland Indians in the 3-hole. They're one of the more active teams this offseason. They brought in several proven major leaguers. Question with them is going to be the starting pitching staff, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. So coming in at 4 is the Kansas City Royals, who, like the White Sox, definitely improved or enhanced their pitching staff over the winter months, acquiring James Shields and Wade Davis from the Tampa Bay Rays in a trade. And then bringing up the rears, the Minnesota Twins, they have no major league talent really outside of Morneau and Mauer and Josh Willingham. And even Mauer and Morneau are shells of their former selves when they were, American League MVP candidates and winning American League MVPs. So, Joe, what do you think is going to be the standings in the American League Central come the end of the 2013 season?
Well, number one, then you got to go with the Tigers. I mean, with the World Series last year, so similar team to what they were. I mean, they're just gonna be good. I mean, compared to everybody else too, they're far and away the best team in that division. Second through fourth was a tough choice for me, just because none of the teams really stand out. Each team has something good with them. Like the Indians have some good hitting. Royals pitching's great, and White Sox, played well last year and only lost the division by 3 games.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's gonna be tough. I mean, I'm gonna go with the White Sox. Doing it again. They're gonna finish 2. Their lineup's still solid. Pitching wise, they still look good. I mean, solid. If PV can play well or pitch well, I mean, they're gonna be fine.
And stay healthy.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that's their big thing. 3, I'm gonna go with. I'm going to go with Cleveland. Just on the fact that they can hit. I mean, adding Swisher is big. I mean, Santana behind the dish. I mean, Michael Bourne in center. I mean, definitely can do well. Their pitching bothers me. Just Masterson's their ace of that staff, technically.
If you could even use that word.
I mean, he's their number 1 pitcher. And then Ubaldo, I mean, he had that good, 3/4 of a year, and then, over a year, and then he just kind of, fell off in that. But I think, their hitting will keep them in games. 4, I'll go with the Royals. I said it was a tough call. I mean, their pitching, they added a lot. I mean, with James Shields on it, Wade Davis, Erwin Santana. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the 2 through 4 any of them finishing anywhere.
Some combination of Chicago, Kansas City, and Cleveland.
Definitely. And then Minnesota is definitely last. I mean, they really don't have too much big league talent, and the talent they do have is all old. You got guys like Vance Worley, Kevin Correa, Mike Pelfrey in your starting rotation. Guys that are,
Worley's like a decent 4 or 5 starter.
Yeah, but it's all guys that are
Pelfrey hasn't been in the majors in a year or two.
And, you got Mauer, Morneau, guys that are injured all the time. I mean, rarely ever play on the field together just because they're hurt all the time. So it's kind of those things. I mean, Detroit and Minnesota are for sure my 1 and 5, and then 2 through 4. I mean,
they're jockeying for position.
Exactly. I mean, I picked Chicago, Cleveland, and Kansas City, but I mean, I could see any of them finishing 2, 3, or 4.
All right. So we kind of have the same base. We have the same projected order of finish, but we are kind of in agreement that 2 through 4 is kind of wide open. Neither of us can sit here and definitively say that Chicago is going to be 2. I mean, granted, you can't really say that about any team, but based on just kind of projecting, it's hard to kind of set in stone what 2 through 4 is going to look like in this American League Central. All right, so let's start with the Tigers. Run through their lineup and just kind of throw the names out there of who's going to be projected opening day lineup.
Projected opening day starters for the Detroit Tigers. At catcher, we got Alex Avila. At first, we got Prince Fielder. Second, we got Omar Infante. Third, we got Miguel Cabrera. Shortstop, we got Johnny Peralta. In left field, Andy Dirks. In center field, Austin Jackson. In right field, Torrey Hunter. Old man Torrey Hunter. And then at DH, we got Victor Martinez. And the projected opening day starter is none other than Mr. Verlander.
Yeah. Who, as we said on the American League East podcast, you said Sabathia could arguably is the best pitcher in baseball. There's some that would argue that Verlander.
Well, yeah. They're definitely up there in the elite category of pitchers.
Agreed. So the Tigers, they bring in Torrey Hunter in the offseason from the Angels to play right field. They re-sign Anibal Sanchez, who they acquired from the Marlins, along with Omar Infante last year, I believe. Didn't really lose too much. They lost Delman Young, and they lost Jose Valverde, their closer. But still, top to bottom, and then with their pitching staff, I still think they're the class of the American League Central, and probably look to for them. They're probably going to be a favorite to once again, obviously make the playoffs and then get to the World Series as the American League representative.
Definitely. I mean, anytime you go, I mean, it's expected that you're going to repeat. You start out with a target on your back at the beginning of the year. You're the team that won the AL. I mean, teams are going to be gunning for them.
All right, so obviously Miguel Cabrera, Tigers third baseman, flirted with the Triple Crown last year. Do you think he can kind of repeat that same level of production this season? I mean, it's hard to duplicate that good of an offensive season from year to year.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough to go up there. I mean, there's a reason that Triple Crown doesn't come around.
Yeah, that it doesn't happen every year.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good baseball player. He's going to be up there in the categories, obviously. I mean, he's going to, hit for power and things like that. Obviously, I mean, I don't think it's going to be as high or as dominant as last year. Because, I mean, it's hard to, repeat performances like that. But, I mean, he's still going to be up there. He's still going to be, one of the best in the bigs just playing the game.
Definitely.
I mean, it's not going to drop off too much if it does at all.
And then him with Prince Fielder as the 3-4, and also Victor Martinez. I mean, that's got to be one of the better 3-4-5 combinations in not just the American League Central or the American League, but all of baseball.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Another thing I'm going to look at with the Tigers is kind of the continuing development of Austin Jackson. They acquired him from the Yankees a couple years back. I believe the Curtis Granderson deal.
Yeah, it was in 2009 was this last year, so going into the 2010 season.
Okay.
He came over to Detroit, and it's pretty much started ever since. And had pretty good success.
Yeah, he came along nicely, but he's cut down on his strikeouts the last couple of years. He's gotten better as a leadoff hitter as far as getting on base and being able to create runs for Detroit. And I think that if he, again, continues to develop as a player, that they could have a quality leadoff man, start that lineup off, and set up potential RBI opportunities for Fielder and Cabrera and Martinez.
Oh, definitely. Strikeouts something that he's work on. Just struck out 134 times last year, which is better than the 181 times he struck out the year before.
Yeah, he cut it by like 50.
Yeah, exactly. So
which it may not seem like much, but it makes a big difference.
Definitely. 134 is still a lot, but
for a leadoff guy, especially.
Yeah, he needs to cut that down. But I mean, he hit 300, 377 on base percentage, and 137 games. So I mean, he's getting on base. He's doing things that he needs to do as leadoff. He just needs to work on his strikeouts, because he's about a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. So if you can cut that down a little bit,
which you're a big proponent of as a good indicator.
Yeah, for sure, especially for a leadoff guy. Somebody, I mean, you want somebody that's not going to strike out much. You want somebody that's going to put it in play and try to get on base, so those big bats behind him can drive in runs. So he can work on that. I mean, he's a good baseball player. I think he's going to continue to improve. And, I mean, he's just one of the reasons why I think Detroit's going to win the division and, be a serious contender for the World Series.
All right. Just run through their pitching staff real fast.
Yeah, their starting pitchers are Justin Verlander. You got Doug Fister. You got Anibal Sanchez. Scherzer and Porcello.
That's a pretty solid 1 through 5 rotation.
Without a doubt.
I mean, obviously Verlander, ace of the staff, former MVP. Sanchez is a quality starter. I mean, all the guys are quality starters, and I think they kind of profile nicely in their spot in the rotation.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not a stretch that they're in the rotation, but they're also not, like, a guy like Porcello is not, number one starter in the major leagues.
Exactly. And the best thing about it is none of these guys are really old, but they all have some experience under their belt.
Yeah.
They're all
postseason experience too.
Yeah, exactly. They're all, right around like 30 years old, which is a good age for a pitcher because it's not too old, and they've been in the majors. I mean, they're proven. You see what they can do. I mean, there's not going to be really too many surprises with it, as long as they can stay healthy. I mean, the only way I can see Detroit really faltering, if something, God forbid, something happened to Verlander, got hurt early in the season, something like that.
What about Cabrera? Do you think if he goes down, that's really going to impact their lineup? We're not wishing injury on anyone, of course, but just hypothetically speaking.
I mean, obviously it will, from a power standpoint, but I feel like if Verlander were to go down, it would have a bigger impact on the team than if Cabrera went down.
I agree with that statement.
Because Cabrera's just one guy in the lineup. You can have somebody.
They still have Fielder and.
Yeah, you still have guys that can hit for power.
But losing that ace pitcher just from a psychological standpoint of a team is kind of detrimental.
For sure.
It can really kind of rattle.
Because then either like Fister or Sanchez or Scherzer or Porcello would have to step up and be that number one guy. And I mean, I said they're proven and stuff like that, but
there's not Justin Verlander.
I wouldn't necessarily want them as my one, having other options.
All right. So let's move on to the Chicago White Sox, who for a while last season were leading this division until kind of Detroit came on strong. Rob Ventura last season did a good job in his first year as the manager with basically I don't think he had any managerial experience.
No, not
Finished respectable 85 and 77 last year, losing the division by 3 games. Made some kind of low-key moves in the offseason. Their 2 kind of big winter moves were re-signing Jake Peavy and Gavin Floyd, 2 of their starting pitchers, and then also bringing in Jeff Keppinger from the Rays, who's kind of a utility infielder. And then they lost Kevin Youkilis and Brett Myers, but I don't think they'll be missed too much. So let's go ahead and run through Chicago's lineup.
Catcher, Tyler Flowers. First base, Paul Konerko. Second base, Gordon Beckham. Third base, Jeff Keppinger. Shortstop, Alexi Ramirez. Left field, we got Diane Viciedo. In center field, we got Alejandro De Aza. And right, we got Alex Rios, DH, Adam Dunn, and then starting pitchers. Opening day starter is going to be Chris Sale or Chris Sale, how are you going to pronounce it?
Sale.
Whatever. It's
Yeah.
the same difference.
No names that really kind of reach off the paper and kind of grab you, demand your attention.
No. Canerco, Rios, Dunn, all guys have definitely seen better days.
Dunn had a terrible year last year.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point where he was like hitting. It was kind of laughable how bad he was hitting against left-handed pitching last year.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, like he was like around 200, like between 200 and 220.
He struggled. He struggled to say the least.
He didn't get the big deal to hit 300, but they at least wanted better production than that out of him.
No, he finished the year batting .204.
Yeah.
I mean, to his credit, he did put up 41 home runs, 96 RBIs. I mean, 41 home runs is good. Want him to get over 100 RBIs, ideally. But, like I said, I don't like strikeouts. 222 strikeouts on the season, which I guess that adds to why he only hit about 200.
When you're paying a DH $32 million or whatever amount he got.
I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You gotta be hitting at least like 260, 270. If you can get 260, 270, hit 40 home runs and over 100 RBIs, no problems with it. When you're hitting 200...
Yeah, the White Sox would sign for that.
Yeah, when you're hitting 200 and striking out 220 times, I mean, you can't have that.
Here's my thing about the DH, though. You got guys like Adam Dunn, who are DHs, just pure sluggers. Like, they're either going to hit the ball a mile or strike out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather, as a manager or just a team in general, want a guy who might not hit 40 home runs, even 30 home runs, but it's going to hit like at least 300 or around closer to 300? Because obviously, if their only job is hitting, they're hitting. You want them to have the most success at the plate, and not necessarily hit the ball at the ballpark at the time, but just put the ball in play and either drive in runs with singles or doubles.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, you want every guy to hit 300.
But it seems like a lot of DHs are just like these like sluggers that only they're.
That's the bad thing about it, which is a reason why I like the National League better, because they don't have the DH. But DH is kind of turned into a position where it's a guy that that can hit, but he can't play in the field anymore.
It's like a Twilight Years position.
Exactly. It's like a guy that's too old to play in the field, so stretch out his how long he can play a little bit more, his lifespan a little bit longer, and put him at DH, and just provide some hit into that lineup. I mean, really, that's what it is. Because if you look at the DHs that are in this division, you got guys like Victor Martinez, Adam Dunn, Billy Butler, Mark Reynolds. I mean,
they all profile as kind of the boppers.
It's guys that are kind of
bust,
either been hurt or on the later end of their career, and guys that are just gonna just hit the piss out of the ball. And they're gonna go out of the park or they're gonna
spin themselves into the ground swinging.
Exactly.
All right, so just run through the White Sox pitching rotation.
All right, Chris Sale, Jake Peavy, John Danks, Gavin Floyd, and Jose Quintana.
Now, they got Chris Sale as the number one starter. He kind of was a breakout star last year. He was an all-star.
Mm-hmm.
Power lefty. I mean, if you just saw him on the street, you wouldn't guess he's a Major League Baseball player. I mean...
He's a big deal. I mean, 6'6".
But he's lanky.
Yeah, 180.
He's got like one of those rubber band bodies that allows him to just whip the ball.
Tall, yeah.
And he's got some reach back power.
Definitely.
Like, he can get the ball up in the upper 90s. And as a lefty, too, that's such a weapon to have at the top of your rotation. And then Peavy, he's battled injuries in the past, but when he has been healthy for the White Sox, he's pitched fairly well for them.
I mean, if he can get back to, like what he's capable of, or even close to that, I mean, it's going to be a good 1-2 right there. I mean, Jay Peavy was an elite pitcher.
Like, I don't think he's a 20-game winner anymore,
no.
But if he can win like 14, 15.
Yeah. I mean, just get back to somewhat of a resemblance of what he was when he was dominating like with the Padres.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be fine.
And then Danks and Floyd have been there for a while, I'm pretty sure. I know Floyd has. I think Danks bounced around a little bit, but they're, proven big league pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the White Sox bullpen, they're kind of like the Rays almost as far as like the way their lineup profiles and just they're not real flashy, but Ventura's gonna get them playing hard, and I think they'll be in it. I don't think really there's any team in this division that's a serious threat to the Tigers, but Chicago will stir the pot a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they'll finish above 500, kind of a similar record to they had last year. But I think they'll ultimately wind up finishing in the second
it's like what we talked about
position.
yesterday with the East. I mean, this could potentially end up being a tight race for different reasons. Just for the fact yesterday it was, every team, no team really stood out, but every team was really good.
Yeah.
Whereas this is, no team stands out, and every team's decent, like above average. It's not like they're great, but they're all like solid, except for the Twins. They have capability of being a solid baseball team.
Yeah.
And also with the White Sox.
See, I think the Tigers, though, are clearly kind of the class of the division, but then the Chicago White Sox.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Tigers somehow have like an injury or two or something like that. I mean, obviously, it's going to hurt any team, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago pushing for
like late
division
into August.
Yeah,
that wouldn't shock me.
In there. I mean, I think the Tigers are going to pull away, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was close. All-Star break, right after the All-Star break, battling back and forth between a couple teams, 2 or 3 teams. And I don't know. So, the White Sox, man, Robin Ventura.
They're going to be an interesting team to watch for sure.
Every time I think the White Sox, Robin Ventura, I think him and Robin Ventura and Nolan Ryan going out.
Yeah.
When he charged him out on Nolan Ryan
beat the snot out of him.
Didn't beat the snot out of him. Got him in a headlock and just gave him like a noogie or something like that. He was just kind of like, just barely tapped his head because Nolan Ryan was an old man at the time. But
alright, so let's move down to Missouri, talk about the Kansas City Royals. Kind of made some surprise moves. Obviously, they made the deal with the Rays, as we previously alluded to. They brought in James Shields and Wade Davis, 2 major league caliber arms, to shore up their pitching staff, which has just been abysmal the last several years. And then they re-signed Jeremy Guthrie again, and they brought in Irvin Santana. So pitching was definitely kind of the primary focus of their offseason in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Run through their lineup just to see what they got as far as position players.
Yeah, behind the dish is Salvador Perez. At first, we got Eric Hosmer. Second, we got Chris Getz. At short, we have Alcides Escobar. At third, we got Mike Moustakas. In left field, we got Alex Gordon. In center field, Lorenzo Cain. In right field, Jeffrey Core. And DH, Billy Butler. And then the opening day starting pitcher, projected opening day starting pitcher, is James Shields.
All right. So a lot of young talent came up through the organization, graduated from the minor leagues up to the Royals. The biggest thing with their lineup is Eric Hosmer was just atrocious last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he kind of, when he first got called up, he showed some promise, but then last year just took a huge step back, did not hit for the same average, and it was not a good year for him.
Yeah. He went from 293 in 128 games in 2011 to 232 last year in 152 games.
It's almost a 50-point drop in batting average. So, if the Royals want to have the success, because the reason that hurt them so much is because they could not score runs last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have the type of pitching staff where, they're winning a lot of 3-2 games. They needed to score runs to win games, and obviously they didn't do that. That's why they finished 72 and 90. Mm-hmm. Moustakas, their third baseman, is another young player that they have that has showed promise and was kind of one of their top prospects coming up to their minor league system. And I think he could be a breakout candidate this year in the Central.
He's having a good spring so far. He's hitting. We only had 2 at-bats so far, but he's 5 for 10, 2 RBIs, I mean, I know it's early in spring training, but it's always good to see somebody performing right out of the gates.
Yeah. I think if their corner infielders can have good seasons, that's kind of going to be indicative of how well the Royals season goes. Now, their pitching staff obviously improved. But do you think it's good enough combined with their lineup for the Royals to kind of legitimately have a shot at competing in this division? Not necessarily this season, but like 2 or 3 seasons down the road?
Yeah, I think their pitching staff is definitely going to help them stay in games. I mean, like you just said, they need to shore up some things offensively. Need to score some runs. I mean, yeah, it depends if Hosmer, Moustakas, and
Alex Gordon.
Alex Gordon. Guys like that can, play well and hit. I think that they have like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. I think we both picked them for, 4th?
Yeah.
And if they can play, I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 2nd. The pitching staff's definitely going to keep them in there. The guys like Shields and, Guthrie and Urban Santana, Wade Davis, Bruce Chin. I mean, that's their rotation. That's pretty solid from top to bottom. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad.
All right, let me pose this question to you about the Royals. If you had to put a percentage number on kind of the confidence that, or kind of the predictability that they're going to finish above 500 this year, what would you put that number at?
How confident am I they're going to finish above 500?
Yeah.
What did they finish at last year?
72-90. So they were 10 games under 500.
And they finished...
9 games under 500.
Okay. And they finished, 3rd in the division?
Yes.
500. I'll be optimistic with this answer, a high end. But I'm going to say it's probably like 40 to 50%. Not that confident.
Not that confident?
No, I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised. That's why I put it probably about 50. But they're going to have to score runs. And, some things are going to have to change from what it was last year. Because the way they played last year is just not...
They were not a very good baseball team. They finished 3rd in their division, but the Central was
real weak.
Down last year. And, they lost 90 games and finished 3rd. That's kind of the telling sign of just kind of...
Yeah, I'll put it at 40% that they finish above 500.
That's fair. I would
and that still puts them close in division because last year Detroit was 88 and 74, and Chicago was 85 and 77. So this isn't a division that's going to finish that high above 500. It's not going to be like the East, like we talked about yesterday, where
it's going to take 95 games to win the division.
Yeah, it's not going to take that. And if the Royals can get to 500 or finish above 500, they're going to be right there competing for the division. So there's a chance, but they're just going to have to start scoring some runs. That's their question mark. I think their pitching staff is good enough to keep them in games, especially with the rest of the division outside of Detroit. But we'll see.
All right, so let's move on to the Wahoos, Cleveland Indians, who made a lot of moves in this offseason. Not particularly with their pitching staff, but their lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Brought in guys, Drew Stubbs from the Reds, Nick Swisher from the Yankees, Michael Bourne, who they added late in the offseason, who kind of who was expecting to get a big deal, and then obviously the market wasn't there for what he was asking for, and Cleveland scooped him up late. Mark Reynolds brought him in from the Orioles, and then they added Trevor Bauer from the Diamondbacks, who was one of their top young pitching prospects, had spent some time in the major leagues before. And then they lost Shin-Soo Choo to the Reds. That was kind of their only really big loss of the offseason. Last year, the Indians finished 68-94. Not a great year. But let's go ahead and run through their lineup for this year, projected opening day lineup.
Projected opening day lineup. At catcher, you got Carlos Santana, Nick Swisher playing first base. Jason Kipnis at second. Lonnie Chisenhall at third. Is Dribble Cabrera at short. In the outfield, you got Michael Brantley at left, Michael Bourne in center, and Drew Stubbs at right, with Mark Reynolds DHing. And then we got Justin Masterson projected number 1 opening day starter.
All right. Now the big question with the Indians is obviously the pitching staff. Justin Masterson is definitely not a guy who most, if not any people, any fans of baseball would consider an ace, let alone a number 1 pitcher on a major league staff. But I think the moves they made with the lineup will kind of not necessarily allow them to overcome their pitching deficiencies, starting pitching deficiencies, but will definitely allow them to win or can be in more games with their ability to score runs. I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to hit a lot of balls out of the ballpark. I mean, guys like Michael Bourne and Stubbs are definitely going to be a team that's going to get guys on base and bunt people over and steal bases and definitely play small ball, manufacture runs in order to score.
Mm-hmm.
But the deficiencies in their starting pitching can definitely be
they're big
covered up by their bullpen.
Yeah. I mean, if, like you're saying, their offense can keep them in games. I mean, Chris Perez, closer, is one of my favorite guys. I mean, obviously, I saw...
Not afraid to call out the fans, as evidence last year.
Yeah.
He had some pretty harsh remarks for the Indians fans about their attendance.
You know, I mean, I like it, though. I mean, that means he's all in for that team. He wants to be a part of that. I mean, if you don't care, you're not going to call him out. I mean, he actually cares. He wants the team to do well. And he's a good guy. Throws heat. I mean, reaches. Yeah, he can hit upper mid 90s, consistent bases. I mean, it's a guy that I saw when I was, when he was coming up to the system, being a Memphis Redbird and St. Louis Cardinal. Hate to see him get traded away, but yeah, he's definitely a good guy. So I mean, if they can get to the 9th inning, I mean, I'm confident that he will close out games, and the Indians should be confident. It's just whether or not they're going to be in games late.
Yeah. And then another thing with their lineup is Nick Swisher, who played right field predominantly last year with the Yankees, moving to first base. He played it a little last year, a couple spot starts, when need be, based on guys being hurt or just resting guys. How do you think he'll handle kind of moving to the full-time position switch to first base from right field?
I mean, he's played some, so he understands it a little bit. I'm sure he's worked on it in the off season. That was their planning coming in, was for him to play first base. So I think he'll be ready. I mean, I think he'll adjust to it quicker than we were talking about Napoli yesterday. Just because, I mean, he knew that this was what was going to happen, and he's played some. I mean, he'll still struggle a little bit early on, I feel like, but until he gets really comfortable with the position. But, I mean, I think he'll handle it fine. And, I mean, they needed to handle it fine because they need his bat in the lineup.
Yeah, that's for sure. And also, Mark Reynolds at the DH. Talk about another guy like Adam Dunn, boom or bust, DH.
Mark Reynolds is one of my least favorite baseball players.
For the simple reason that
he strikes out the most in the major leagues every single year. And I hate guys that do that. It's just, I don't know. It's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
I mean, last year was a good year for him, and he struck out 159 times.
In how many at-bats?
457. And that's a good year. I mean, he had a span from 2008 to 2010, struck out 204 times, 223 times, and 211 times in the season, and then 196 in 2011.
So he's had multiple years where he struck out over 200 times.
Yeah, he had a span of 4 straight years where he struck out at least 196 in a season.
Then last year, striking out 159 times and 457 at-bats roughly equates to striking out 35% of the time.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not. And he doesn't hit. What was his average last year? His average wasn't even that high.
221.
Yeah.
And he
was barely above the Mendoza line.
He didn't even hit for power. He had 23 homers, 69 RBIs. I mean, it's a guy that strikes out a lot. hits for some power, and that's about it. I mean, I think he's dead weight in the lineup. I don't think he adds too much. I think he hurts the team more than he adds to it.
That's a fair point.
Especially if you're going to put him in the middle. I mean, you're going to have guys on in front of him, and you want him to at least get them over. I mean, no matter where he's in life, you're going to have guys in front of you. You want him to at least get them over, if not score them. And if you're striking out, you're not doing that.
Yeah, you might need a fly ball to, allow a guy to tag up the score or move over, and when a guy strikes out at that rate, you can't really count on him too much to be able to move runners over and set up other guys in the lineup. So let's head to the land of 10,000 lakes now, the Minnesota Twins. After many kind of successful years in the Metrodome, they went outside to Target Field, a brand new ballpark, and they have not been very competitive ever since.
No, not at all.
Which is a shame when teams open these brand new spanky facilities and they don't put a good product on the field to allow fans to come out and enjoy it. But that's a topic for another day. So let's go ahead and go through their lineup and see what they're rolling out this season.
Yeah, I project starting lineup for the Minnesota Twins. Yeah, Joe Mauer at catcher, Justin Morneau at first, Jamie Carroll at second, Trevor Pluff at third, Pedro Foreman at short, got Josh Willingham at left, Darren Mastriani in center, Chris Parmalee in right, and then at DH we got Ryan Dumit, however you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Dumit.
We're going to keep it at that. That sounds good for right now. And the projected opening day starter for the Minnesota Twins, Scott Diamond.
Yeah. Now, the Twins last year finished 66-96. So they almost lost 100 games. So it was not a very fun year out in Minnesota.
I don't see them getting too much better this year.
So you think they finish about the same record?
If not worse.
Yikes, bold prediction from Joe. Do you think they could potentially lose 100 games? I mean, they were only 4 away last year, and obviously you think they could do worse.
Yeah, I mean...
Here's a question for you. Greater chance of happening. Minnesota losing 100 games or Kansas City finishing above 500? Minnesota was 4 games away last year from losing 100 games.
Yeah.
Kansas City was 9 games away from finishing 500.
I'll say better chance of Minnesota losing 100 games.
I think I would go with that too.
Just for the fact that,
it's easier to lose games than it is to win games.
Yeah, especially, when you start getting on those losing streaks, and I'm sure they'll get rattled with some injuries because Mauer and Morneau are very injury prone. You have a young team, or a team like this, not a whole lot of talent.
A lot of 4A players.
Yeah, exactly. And, if guys start getting injured, people are just going to get, especially, young guys get upset so easily. Just the mentality, oh, we suck. You just go out there just to play the game and get your paycheck. You're not going out there to win necessarily. So I feel like if they start getting injured and start losing early on, they could definitely just, tailspin into losing 100 games at least.
Definitely a realistic possibility. Now, in the offseason, they acquired Vance Worley from the Phillies in the Ben Revere trade. Obviously, in that trade, losing Ben Revere, promising young outfielder. Brought in Kevin Correa from the Pirates, who kind of had a drop in the barrel as far as period of consistent production, and then they lost Denard Spahn to the Washington Nationals. So I would kind of chalk that up to a negative as far as, or kind of a subtraction as far as their offseason moves.
Got worse over the offseason. Definitely.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Mauer and Morneau. 2 guys. Morneau won the AL MVP several years ago. Mauer was in contention for one. He might have won one. He won Rookie of the Year.
Pretty sure he won one.
They have just not been themselves in recent years. Morneau has had the struggles with the concussions, and Mauer, I don't know what his deal is, but he is not the same. I mean, he was kind of a couple years ago, he was a lock to hit 300. And now he's just not himself. And, those are two guys who are stars and key parts of the Twins, winning the Central Division and going into the playoffs under Ron Gardenhire.
Yeah.
And they've just lost it. And it's kind of sad because they were two bright spots for, one of the smaller market teams in the league and made them competitive, but now they don't have the same ability they had.
I mean, they built the team up and had those two guys as key components, and we're going to hold on to them no matter what.
I mean, those were their 3-4 hitters.
Yeah, exactly. So they were guys they were going to build their lineup around. Well, they got injured. They didn't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why they were good. Like, when Morneau and Mauer were healthy, when they were playing well, they had other solid pieces around them.
Torrey Hunter.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they had a legit club back in the day, in mid 2000s, early 2000s.
And they just try to hold on to these guys, and they just got injured. That's what kind of sent the team downwards. And it's just I haven't been able to recover.
Yeah, Morneau is having all those troubles with concussions, which with all the stuff that they're learning about concussions in the NFL, I think it's going to start to become more of a prevalent issue in Major League Baseball. They've engineered new batting helmets, but he just can't seem to get right.
Yeah, well, he finally got a full season in this past year. I mean, 2010, 2011, I think it was one season he played about 80 games, one season he played 60. He got 134 games in last year, which is good to see. I mean, that means he's able to play more, but his production just...
What did he hit last year?
He hit about 220 last year. So, I mean, it's good to have him back and playing well, but, I mean, he's not at the level that he was at before, or close to that level.
Yeah, which was AL MVP.
Exactly. And then Mauer played 147 games last year, hit 319. I mean, he had a solid season, but you never know with him. I mean, he might get injured playing catcher all the time.
Definitely wears down.
Where's at your legs?
That was one of the big questions with him. When he first broke into the league, is obviously he's a big catcher. He's 6'4", and then the constant wear and tear on your body, your knees, and your knees and your legs especially. There were talks about should they move him to first, but they had Morneau, and he was tearing the cover off the ball every season.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of they were hesitant to move him to first base.
Well, I mean, worst comes to worst,
DH.
So let's DH him some.
Because Domit's a former catcher.
He's their backup catcher right now.
Yeah, so they can kind of flip flop those two guys.
Yeah, especially so if Mauer starts getting tired legs or something like that.
Yeah.
Put him in DH. Let him just rest it for a little bit. Just let him hit. But their lineup is not good right now.
I don't think it's the worst.
It's not the worst, but they need.
It's not ready.
Mauer to stay healthy.
Compete.
They need guys like Morneau to step up. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think their pitching staff's that good either.
All right, so those are our team by team kind of breakdowns and discussions. So let's move on to some kind of just general questions about the American League Central here. Give me one storyline you're going to be watching throughout the course of the year. It could be a specific kind of position battle or kind of the way a manager uses a certain player or just kind of the way a team comes together. What's going to kind of be your one thing you're going to look for in the American League Central?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of stuff. I'll go back to what you were saying about the Royals, just because their pitching staff is good. How they produce offensively, especially with how Hosmer comes back from a bad season, and how much Stakas, if he steps up, guys like that. Just see how they perform offensively, because I think they have the pitching staff to definitely compete in that division and compete for a potential wild card if they can get their act together.
Oh, bold prediction perhaps?
No, I'm not saying they're going to.
Right.
I'm saying if they get their act together, they have a chance. But they're just not going to right now. I mean, I'm going to look at that.
Definitely. I'm going to go back to the Cleveland Indians because I think if you asked me to give you a surprise team in the American League, I think it would be Cleveland. They definitely upgrade their lineup in the offseason, but the pitching is, going to be kind of their Achilles heel.
Yeah, they're the opposite.
But they got a lot of guys on their team that are fun to watch. Bourne, Stubbs. I think Jason Kipnis could have breakout star potential. I'll go more in depth on that on our next kind of discussion point. But they're definitely going to be a fun team to watch, and the way they come together. And also another thing that we forgot to mention when we were talking about them earlier, bringing Terry Francona in as a manager.
True.
That's a guy, players love to play for him, kind of pushed out in Boston, spent a year in broadcasting, now he's back in the dugout. I think he'll get those guys believing that they can, win games. And they're going to be a fun team to watch.
I mean, that's why I say going back to it, that's why the 2 through 4 in this division is so tough to predict.
It's a crapshoot.
I mean, each team has their things. I mean, White Sox were good last year, have a solid lineup. Kansas City, good pitching. If their offense can catch up to that, they'll be good. Indians are kind of the opposite of the Royals, where they have good offense. Pitching is questionable. They have Terry Francona, who's going to have them ready to play. So it's kind of one of those things where each of those 3 teams have definite positives and negatives to them. So it's just going to be a battle, I think.
All right. I asked you this when we were breaking down the AL East. I'm going to ask you it again. Give me a guy in the American League Central who can be like a breakout player or one of those guys that'll make people take notice this year. Want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
All right, I mentioned him
I'll let you
as far as storyline, but Jason Kipnis from the Cleveland Indians, their second baseman, I think he should have been an all-star last year, at least mentioned in the final vote. But he's a solid. I think he's going to be one of their building blocks going forward. He's young. I think he's 25, 26 years old, maybe left-handed hitter playing second base. He can steal bases. He hits for, I believe he hit high 270s last year, if not higher. He's not going to hit a ton of home runs, but he can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And I think he's going to be a good top-of-the-order hitter for the Indians this year and really allow the guys behind. He's going to get on base and allow the guys behind him to give them RBI opportunities. So Jason Kipnis from the Indians is definitely going to be my kind of guy to watch this year.
Okay. All right. Well, my guy, it's not necessarily. I'm not going to pick a breakout player, but I'm going to pick a guy to watch more so because he's definitely not a breakout. He's definitely been there a while. All right. Well, it was between 2, but for the Tigers, I know they're, obviously number 1, but Torrey Hunter.
Interesting. Going with the old vet.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't going to pick a breakout, but go to the opposite of it. He's on the end of his career, but I think that he is somebody that is going to contribute greatly to the Tigers, and even if they do have an injury, somebody that's going to step up a little bit. I mean, he's obviously on the decline, but played well last year, hit .313. I mean, defensively, he's not as, not as rangy.
But he was like all world.
But he is still better than, better than most people out there. And it's a guy that's old and kind of forgotten about, or starting to. But I think that's somebody that definitely is going to contribute, especially if this comes down to a tight race. That's somebody that could, be a factor that's nobody's really paying attention to that can help them win.
Definitely. So that's going to do it for our American League Central preview as part of our 2013 wall-to-wall baseball MLB preview. On the next installment, we're going to be breaking down and previewing the American League West. But until next time, I'm Brad Haider, Joe Pascal. Adios.
Peace.